Okay. Hi everyone, it's Artie from Human Chapters, and today we're going to have a conversation with Shalini Bhalla-Lucas. But before we start that conversation, I'll provide a little bit of an introduction for Human Chapters. Humans are living narratives with the past, present, and future. These narratives constitute of a number of chapters across a lifespan. The aim of these conversations is to highlight a chapter of the narrative and unpack its connections to other chapters. I don't care whether people are natural storytellers, but each person has a story to tell. A little bit of an acknowledgement to country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, past and present and emerging. We celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Beautiful. So I'll pass on the floor to Shalini and she will introduce herself. And Shalini's chapter is going to be the new COVID chapter.
Oh, okay, cool. Hi everyone, I'm Shalini. I'm here in Kenya at the moment, and I think that's my new chapter really, because I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be traveling Europe, but I'm sure we'll come to that. I'm a writer, a radio presenter, a TV presenter, and a mindfulness and dance teacher. I think that was everything. I'm sure there's other stuff, but yeah.
Beautiful.
By the way, I just want to say that, you said everybody has a story. And I'm saying that again and again. Every single one of us has a story. And there are people that you don't think have stories, and then they say something, you're like, oh my gosh.
That's
right. They hide it so well.
Aren't we so biased? Like we think our story is not important or not that interesting to someone else. But unfortunately, that's not our decision to make, is it?
No. And I think it's really interesting that it's interesting how stories come out of, somebody will go, oh, well, it's not important. And I'll say, no, tell me what you think is not important, because what you think is not important might be that gem that I need for a story or for a radio program or whatever. So it's really interesting.
Absolutely. So Shalini, back to you. What took you to Kenya?
Okay, so last year, a lot of people know my story, but I'll go back slightly. So my husband died 4 years ago, and last year I just realized that I couldn't carry on living in the home that we built together, that we in the village that we'd lived together for 19 years. I was just really lonely, and I needed to make a huge change in my life. And so I packed up my home, I rented it out, I gave away 3/4 of my stuff, and I decided to travel the world. And I started first by going to Sri Lanka and driving a tuk-tuk around the island. I went to London and stayed in London for a few months with my cousin, just to feel London city life. And then I came to Kenya, and it was on the 2nd of December I came to Kenya, and I was only going to be here for 3 or 4 months. And it was to see family, it was to reconnect with mom and my sister. My dad died a couple of years ago as well. So, and I have a cabin here that I have built in tribute to my husband, Jeremy. So I was going to spend quite a lot of time there. It's in Nanyuki, which is on the equator of Kenya. And I spent some time there. I came, and then just stuff started happening. I think when you least expect things, or I was not looking for work. I was not looking to do mindfulness. I was not looking to, and the universe just decided that I needed to be here. And I wanted to leave in March. I was going to leave here. In fact, 2nd of April, I was going to fly back to the UK. I was going to pick my car up, which is in the village that I was living in with a friend. And I was going to drive through Europe for 3 months on my own. Let's go to these different Airbnbs. I was going to go to Tuscany for a month and work on a vineyard. It had all been organized. And I was going to, in my head, meet a beautiful Italian man, learn Italian, drink lots of Italian wine. And then COVID happened. And I realized that actually I couldn't travel. And Italy at that time was at the epicenter of COVID. And that was suddenly my new chapter, meant that Kenya was where I was meant to be. And it was completely out of my, And actually, had I left a month before, I would probably have got stuck somewhere in Europe, right? So it's really interesting that I was supposed to leave on the 2nd of April, and Kenya actually closed, I think, on the 23rd of March. So it was like a week or something. So it was very interesting, very interesting. So yeah,
Things,
I'm here.
things happen almost as though they have the right time and as they're meant to unfold. Um, so COVID, you've spent COVID in Kenya. Tell us a little bit about your journey. What has the new chapter been like for you? Where has it taken you? What have you been up to?
So the first couple of months, I literally did nothing. I read. I was finishing my third book, which I'll talk about, because I wanted to publish it here in Kenya with my other two books. So I worked quite hard on that December, January. And in February, I actually met somebody from KTN, who's KTN head of programming, Catherine. And she was so interested in mental health because I said I'm a mindfulness teacher. It was a chance meeting. We just happened to message on Facebook on a women's networking group. We met for coffee, and coffee turned into lunch, which turned into another coffee kind of thing. So 4 or 5 hours later. And she said, let's do a show together on KTN, we called it The Art of Wellbeing. It was going to be about mental health, and it was going to be interviewing people. So I said, that's fine, but I'd have to film like a season of 13 in a few weeks. And then I am going to Tuscany. That was the plan. I decided I was going to do it. I had to go back to UK. I had to sort stuff out. I had to pick my car up. And so we did a couple of pilots, and we were ready to go with the rest of the show. And at the same time, I met a guy here who is actually a childhood friend. I've known him all his life. I literally have known him all his life because I'm a couple of years older than him. And we were family, our families were friends. So my mom and her siblings and his dad and his siblings grew up together. And then my dad and his dad were really good friends. So we would spend weekends together. We were in and out of each other's houses really as kids. So I knew him. And we reconnected, and we ended up actually starting a relationship. So that then became another reason that I couldn't really leave. But actually, we talked about it, and I said, look, I do want to travel the world. So you can either come with me, or I will go, and then we'll do the kind of long distance. Because at that time, we were not very serious. But because of being here, suddenly I was talking about mental health a lot more. I got other gigs come up, and it was just really weird. It was like the universe was just conspiring to keep me. Every time I tried to leave or something, like, okay, so it was KTN, and then it was a relationship, and then it was COVID, which was probably the biggest thing. And then actually, forget COVID, the relationship became the biggest thing, really. And then work, like I was starting to write for a newspaper, and then I got a radio gig, and then actually now, if I'm really honest, I think the relationship is keeping me here. So yeah.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about this relationship, and particularly the cultural complexities of a relationship. Being um, in an being an Indian girl, grown up in Kenya. Yeah, take us through a little bit of that journey. What has it been like for you, Shalini?
So, I mean, I think if I go back first to when I first met Jeremy, I was 21 and he was 40. I was this good Indian girl that had left Kenya, gone to the UK to study. He was divorced. He had 3 children in tow. He was English. So I broke every single rule, every single thing when I was 21. And I had to make a choice between family and Jeremy, and I chose Jeremy. So I was fearless when I was 21. I was like, and actually probably quite selfish in my love. I was like, I don't care how destructive this is for the rest of the family. I know this is right. And I still feel that. I still feel I made the right decision. Perhaps the way I went about it wasn't great. Maybe I should have been a little bit more understanding of what my parents were going through in Nairobi. But I was young, and I was in love, and I was determined to be with this man. And I'm glad I did fight for that. But it did mean I was estranged from the family for 12 years. So I didn't see my mom and dad for 12 years and the extended family. But that was part of, we reconciled a few years later after 12 years. And I suppose coming back to Kenya after Jeremy died was part of that, also that building bridges. So I had broken every single mold. And so meeting this guy here who is from the Asian community, you know, we're very clear on a few things. I don't want to get married, neither does he. I don't want children, neither does he. If we decide to, and I'm kind of semi-living with him, but if I decide to live here permanently, then that's, you know, it'll be a live-in relationship. And Nairobi is a very, the Asian community in Nairobi is pretty traditional. And I know it happens, people do live together, but nobody's talking about it. And I find that infuriating, because what the hell? We're grown up, right? We're consenting adults. And if we decide that we want to live together, well, I don't really care what anybody says. I think what perhaps a little bit is that I hope my mom doesn't feel that she's, you know, she's going to have to go through that again. But she lives in Nanyuki now, so she's not even within the society. My aunt doesn't mind. She's very open-minded. His parents are very open-minded. So that's one of the things that we've talked about, and actually I think we've come to terms with. But the other thing I think that's really hard for both of us is the fact that I'm a widow. And for me, it's all the guilt of moving forward in a relationship. That's hard because I feel like I'm betraying Jeremy. But I know that when I think about it logically, I know that Jeremy would want this for me. He would want me to be happy. But at the same time, I have guilt about being with this other man, sleeping with this other man, living my life with this other man, sharing everything that I had shared with Jeremy. So it's quite difficult. And for him, the difficulty is he's not my first love, right? Jeremy was my first love. He feels that Jeremy was my soulmate. So how do I, and I said to him that I believe you can have more than one soulmate in this lifetime. In fact, you can have many, and they don't always have to be even romantic. So, but he will see me put things on Facebook, like on Saturday, it was Jeremy's birthday. So I put this thing on Facebook saying, missing you, love you, wish you were here. That's hard for somebody who's in a relationship with me, because he's like, if you wish he was here, that means you wouldn't be, if Jeremy was alive, I wouldn't be with him. So there are so many complexities as a widow, let alone an Indian widow in Nairobi, about starting a new relationship. I still wear my rings. This is the ring that Jeremy gave me a month into our relationship. This is his wedding ring and my wedding ring. This is his ashes. So I carry him with me all the time, physically and mentally and emotionally. And right now we're 8 months into our relationship, me and this new guy. And it's a negotiation, and it's really interesting. It's been tough. Every time I hit a milestone, I push him away, because I'm pushing him away from my grief and my pain and stuff. And he feels closed off from it. So it's a negotiation. But I think the thing that for me is most important is to talk about it. So I'm very open about what we're going through right now.
Yeah. And have you found, like, in the 8 months, has it eased off a little bit, because you have been with, yeah, it has.
It's getting harder. Okay. It's actually getting harder. I think it's getting harder because the first couple of months we were just dating and we were having fun. In fact, we were friends, right? So I met him I met him at my dad's funeral. And then a year later, we went for coffee, and I needed some help with some work here, and he was helping me. And then I didn't see him for a year, and then I came back, and then we went out. He took me out as a friend in Nairobi just to get to know people, and actually to get to know each other again. And so at the beginning, it was just friendship. And actually, when I told him about Jeremy, I felt I could be open. I could cry. It didn't affect him emotionally in any way. So I could say, this happened, and oh, Jeremy said this, or whatever. But then as the relationship got more intense, and actually we realized our feelings for each other grew more intense, then it becomes more difficult to be that honest. But yet I didn't want to change that honesty about it. I had never lied to him before about my relationship with Jeremy. He just read all my books, so he knows. But I think because our emotions and our feelings for each other have changed, it becomes a lot more personal. And so actually, I think what's happened is this last couple of weeks has been tough. But But I think the one thing we realize is that, and I think also, when you get to know, there's always this facade at the beginning of a relationship, right? You act your best, you look your best, you sound your best, you are your best. And actually, the more time you spend together and the more authentic you become with each other, you realize actually this person that you've put on a pedestal isn't that person. She has flaws, he has flaws, she's as neurotic as they come, right? I'm a mindfulness teacher, I still have my insecurities, but the first 4, 5, 6 months I didn't show him that, but now I show him my insecurities. And so it's a negotiation, and he'll be triggered by something, because I talk about Jeremy a lot on social media, on my Engage talk, in my books, in every interview he comes up. And if this guy sees that, which he does, because he's very involved in all my work, it's triggering. So I think the only thing we can be with each other is honest, authentic, but yeah, it's definitely got harder. I think it will still get harder, but I think the main thing that we're both in agreement about is that we want to make it work, because for him, this is the first time he's really, really been in a relationship, and for me, yeah, I feel like I've had a second chance at happiness, and he's given me that. So there's no way I want to lose that. So we'll work at it.
Beautiful. And I suppose that leads us into some of your social platforms, Shalini. One of the ones I would love to talk about is on Instagram. You and your co-partner have a show, Controversial Widows. What's that about?
So we've only just started, and we've only done 1 or 2 episodes, and I think Asian widows, if you look at Asian widows, they are, I've done a lot of work around widows around the world, because I was working for a while for the Lumba Foundation in the UK. In fact, since COVID, we've not really done very much. But also for International Widows Day in June, I did a whole lot of Instagram interviews with widows in the UK and also in Kenya for a charity called Way. I'm an ambassador for Way. That's Widowed and Young. It's for everybody who's lost a spouse or a partner or under the age of 50. So as an ambassador for them, I do a lot of talks around widowhood and stuff. And Ria is a widow who was widowed here in Kenya, and she is in her 30s. And we literally met because I interviewed her, and she has a harrowing story about how her husband died. He was shot, and she held him in her arms, and we just clicked, and we talked about how in Asian communities, a widow she loses her identity. Not just in Asian communities, in a lot of communities, you lose your identity. First of all, you lose your husband, then you lose your dreams and plans and everything that you thought was going to be your future. Then you lose your identity. In some cultures, you lose your home, your children, your inheritance. It just really did. I mean, the African culture even goes to things like sexual cleansing, or you have to sleep with your husband's brother, and it's just interesting how women go through this, but a man, when he's widowed, doesn't go through the same things. So we talked a lot about this. It was really interesting. And I said, I feel pigeonholed sometimes that as a widow, should I be dating? Should I be seeing other men? So my second book, actually, which was Online Dating at 40, is a very candid look at a widow dating in her 40s and everything that entailed. So I was very open about it. I talk about sex in there. I talk about relationships. I talk about being hurt. I talk about, do I remove my wedding rings, etc. So I just felt that there was a need for this conversation here in Nairobi, because even when I was looking to publish my 3 books, I questioned whether I should publish Online Dating at 40, because I didn't know whether the people here whether the Indian community here in Nairobi would judge me. Mm-hmm. And in the end, I decided to publish all 3 books and damn the consequences. Yeah. But just the fact that I thought about it meant there was a problem. The fact that I was like, should I, shouldn't I? No, hang on a second. This is my story. You don't like it, don't read it. This is and I've done that with a few things on Instagram as well. I posted recently, I don't know if you saw some photos on body positivity, and I was saying, this is my body. You don't like it, don't look. This is my body. You don't have a right to comment. This is my life. You don't like how I live my life? Look away. You don't have a right to comment. You don't pay my bills. You don't pay for my food. You don't pay for my therapist. You don't pay for anything. So really, I don't care. So, but I felt like I wanted to talk about this a lot more openly. I wanted to talk about sex before marriage, open relationships. Should we be talking about death to children? Should we be teaching children about sex education in schools in Kenya, because they don't? So I wanted to start really questioning and talking about stuff that people weren't talking. And actually, the first thing I started talking about was mental health. And actually, since talking about mental health, a lot of people do talk about it. But when I first started doing KTN, I couldn't get any Asians to come and talk about depression because nobody wanted to be honest about their depression. And yet I've written books about it. I talk about it. I'm very open about it. So I wanted to start shaking and ruffling a few feathers. And I felt that this was a good platform to do it. So let's see. It's very new. I don't know how it will be. I don't know how it will be received.
Yeah.
But I'm happy I'm happy to ruffle a few feathers. In fact, a lot of feathers.
Brilliant. And that's the thing, right? Like, so within the Indian or the Asian community, so many topics are so taboo. And, keep it under closed lid, or just have it, don't express your emotions, or don't be that honest. Don't let other people know what's going on. And again, having grown up in Nairobi, that's usually been passed down cultures. It was very similar for my parents, very similar, like for my parents and grandparents, they probably had it worse off, but all of those generations, and it's almost been that intergenerational culture and tradition. And between, I think, this generation and my parents, it's almost been like a more than one generation gap, just because of everything, all the opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's shifted a lot in just one generation. I think first of all, Asian women are not putting up with the shit that we used to put up with. I think we are empowered, we are independent financially, we've probably studied abroad at universities abroad, lived alone. So we are very different to what our parents were like. Um, I I want to have these conversations. I want women to say, my husband is not satisfying me sexually.
Mm.
Okay, I want women to have those conversations. My son is gay. I want them to have that conversation. I know my wife is having an affair. What do I do about it? Because again, in Nairobi, it's really interesting just about extramarital affairs and stuff. So I want people to be talking about these things and saying, actually, these things happen. I was talking to a friend of mine. She's African Kenyan. She said, and she doesn't know much about the Indian culture. And I said, these are the kind of things that we're looking at in Indian culture, things like extramarital affairs and women not being sexually satisfied and stuff. And she goes, I thought the Asian community, the Indian community in Kenya everything was great. It's all so glossy. And that is the impression that people have, that it's all good. Nobody's got any financial troubles. Nobody's got mental health issues. Nobody's got incest and this and that. And I'm like, you have no idea. Every culture, yeah, people have stories. We just said that. So every culture has its things to deal with. We just don't talk about it. And how can we be bringing up the next generation if we're not honest about what we're all going through? How can we say to people with depression, pull up your socks, you'll be fine? This is not the Indian way. How can we say to a wife who's in a loveless, sexless marriage, or a husband who's in a loveless, sexless marriage, that that's okay? It's not okay. And I think that we have to start talking about it so that people can say, yes, I have depression, I need to get help. Yes, I'm in a sexless marriage, what am I going to do about it? Because life is too short to be unhappy. So yeah, I do want people to talk about it. And I think I might not be very popular in the Indian community in a few weeks' time, but I don't care.
Shalini, why is your drive so strong, and it appears really deep? Why do you want people to talk about it and bring it to light?
Because I think when I was, and that's a really good question. You know how many people have asked me that? I think because when I was 21, I couldn't be open about my relationship to Jeremy. I hid it from my family for 18 months. And then when it came up, it was such a taboo thing. Oh my God, she's gone. I remember the guy I'm seeing said that he had heard, oh, Shalini had gone to the dark side. I mean, what the hell does that mean? I'd fallen in love, right? She's disappointed her parents. She's let down. She's the black sheep of the family, blah, blah, blah. Because I couldn't talk honestly about a relationship to an English man. I mean, what the hell are we talking about? Yeah. And then when I had depression and I went into hospital, I remember saying to Jeremy, I hope nobody recognizes me, because this is such a stigma to have depression. And then actually what I realized in hospital was that it's actually a mental illness. It's an illness, just like you have a broken arm, you have a broken mind. And so then I wanted to start talking about it so that people won't stigmatize mental health. They won't say, you're pagal, you're mad, you're crazy. No, I have an illness and I have to get treatment for that. And I think also if we look at a place like Kenya with mental health, people will say, oh, you're possessed, or some voodoo on you, or there's an article that's come out, a report that came out last week from, I think it was Human Rights Watch. And they said 60 countries still in the world will so shackle some of their mental health patients because they don't know how to deal with them. And Kenya is one of those countries. So there was one of the stories in there was a guy called Paul in Kisumu who's been shackled, literally chained for years, and he lives in a little room, and he has literally his underwear. He has porridge during the day for breakfast, and if he's lucky, he gets bread at night. And he basically eats in that room, sleeps in that room, shits in that room. He's in that room, and he's shackled. And in this day and age, we should be talking about this and saying that's unacceptable. That's not how you treat mental health. So for me, it started with my relationship, and then mental health and depression. And then I think also the fact that because I live my life the way I want to, if I don't believe in marriage as such, I was married to Jeremy, but we only married a year and a half before he died. And that was partly because he was such a practical man that he said that when I die, you will have no rights. I wouldn't even have had rights over his body at the funeral. The fact that we still have those laws, that I would have had no rights having even been with him for 17, 19 years at the end, is in itself a shame, that we think that marriage is the only way forward and is the only legal way. And I think, if I'm completely honest, I have a lot of opinions about a lot of stuff, and I want to shout about them. I want people to talk about them. I don't want people to live in fear or unhappiness. And I think I have the courage to speak out. Not everybody does. So, and I've got nothing to lose.
That's right. So sometimes, sharing things honestly could mean that you receive the support you like in time, right? Sort of that early support, whether it's preventative or of different things or not. But it's like you're able to tell someone, how long will you go by suppressing it? We know it will come out at some stage or the other.
Exactly. And I think having lived in that kind of suppressed state for a while and then losing my family as a result, and for no reason, it was wrong, because in the end, actually, when they met Jeremy 12 years later, they loved him, and my dad and him became really good friends. And I was just like, that's wasted 12 years because of your perception of what was right for me, that because he was Mzungu, because he was divorced, because he was older than me, he was wrong. You never looked at the person. You never looked at our love for each other. You never looked at the circumstances. And I'd never want that to happen again to me, ever. And so I'm very clear on, if I'm living with the guy I'm with now, that's on my terms. If we decide not to get married or have children, that's on our terms. But I have a lot of confidence in that. And I'm very, I have no fear. But not everybody's like that. And I think that if I'm able to tell a story about somebody who is going through that fearful stage, then somebody else will listen, and they'll go, okay, I'm in that now, I need to change, or I need to get help, or I need to speak out, or I need to. And for me, mental health is very much that. If I can talk about depression and my suicidal ideation and say that I once tried to kill myself, etc., then somebody else will go, okay, but look where she is now. There's obviously a story, and what's my story? How can I get help? And I believe that that's true of all parts of our lives, whether that's work or relationships or our sexuality or whatever. And I just want people to talk, and I think I want people to be authentic. And if they can't be authentic outwardly, I'm very outspoken on social media and stuff, that's okay, but they have to be true to themselves. Because when you're not true to yourselves, you're not living the best, you're not being the best version of yourself. And that will lead to unhappiness. And there's no two ways about that. If I'm not honest about my sexuality, if I'm not honest about my relationship, if I'm not honest about my body, if I'm not, then that grief, that will become grief, it will become pain, it will become sadness, and that will manifest in different ways. So I just want people to talk, and I think that's what it is.
That's so beautiful. I'm absolutely with you. I may be shy, but for things that I truly do believe in, yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about. So I've got a few of your social engagements written here, but tell us about your show on radio. What is that all about?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so the guy I'm seeing actually has a few contacts in the media world, and he just one day contacted a radio DJ here, a radio presenter here called Farid Kimani. He's a really big presenter here on. He's a bit of a celebrity here, and he was doing a radio show on Capital morning drive time show. And Farid, we just had a chat with him and said, look, I'm a mindfulness teacher. I want to talk about mental health. We're going into, we've just gone into COVID. And I said, there are going to be a lot of mental health issues around COVID. I think actually mental health issues around COVID are going to be worse in Kenya than the COVID itself. Let's talk about it. So Farid said, yeah, come on my show, me and Amina, come on the show Thursday mornings, and we'll give you we'll give you half an hour, 40 minutes. So I started going on that show, and every Thursday I'd be there like clockwork, 7:45. And let me tell you, that is not easy for me. I hate mornings. So I had to get up at like 6:30, get ready, put the makeup on. Actually, by the end of it, I wasn't putting makeup on. I was like, this is radio, nobody's going to see me. But anyway, so I'd be there at 8 o'clock, and then from 8 to about 8:45, 9 o'clock, we'd talk about loads of different stuff. And then so 3 months into it, Farid said, look, I think it's time for your own show. So we spoke to the head of programming, and they gave me the slot on a Tuesday evening at 10 o'clock on Capital. It's not the best slot, but it's the slot. And I worked around it, that I wanted it to be about mental health. I wanted us to tell really authentic, deep, quite painful stories, but it was with music. And there was always going to be a meditation in it. And that was kind of and it was based a little bit on I won't actually say. I might get sued. But anyway, so what we would do is we would bring in a guest, and they would tell their story, and then they would choose 5 songs that we would play through the show. So I would say, why have you chosen the song? And often the song relates to a part of their life or a part of their story, which I found really, really interesting. And at the end, we would end with a meditation, and the meditation was always usually tied to what they were going through. So for example, one guy talked about suicide, so then I did an all is well meditation. One person talked about body positivity, so I talked about loving kindness to yourself. And then I would say to them, we would end with frivolous questions like, if it was the last song that you could play, what would that be? What's the best book you've read? If I sent you on a desert island, then you could take one luxury item, what would it be? So we found out the stories of people, we found out a little bit about them through their music, and then we found out something frivolous about them. And I have interviewed some incredible guests. We have covered some amazing stuff, from things people are not talking about. So suicide, depression, body positivity, widowhood, disability. This guy Bill came in, and literally he'd lost his leg in a motorbike accident. He came in, he took off his leg and sat down and in the studio. Like, that was the kind of authentic. We've talked about scleroderma, that's coming out soon. We've talked about rape and sexual abuse of a man, which is, people just don't talk about that in Kenya. It's just been incredible. It's been an incredible, we've talked about the other one that came out a couple of weeks ago that's not talked about here, is postpartum depression. And singer Chematai Sage came on and talked about postpartum depression openly and honestly. And her co-guest, Semoina, talked about She said, I slapped my son when he was 5 months old because he wouldn't stop crying. She said, I was in that place of depression. And to have stories like that on radio in Kenya is just unheard of. And Onyango came on and he said, my father emotionally and physically abused me. And he showed me the scars that his father had burnt him with kerosene. And then he talked about being raped by the house girl. You don't have these stories on radio. And now people are beginning to talk about it. And now actually, it's interesting, in the last 6 months since COVID has happened, or last 8 months, people are now talking about mental health. Mental health is definitely forward in the agenda of people's psyche, in the community, in society, and also the government. So yeah, we're there. I feel like, but I think there's a lot more to be done. I think mental health, that conversation here is 10 years behind the UK. The mental health provision here is 20 years behind the UK. It's got a long way to go. The Kenyan government only allocates 0.02% of its health budget to mental health. That isn't even worth talking about. It's unacceptable. So suicide is still a criminal offense. Attempting to take your life here is a criminal offense. That's unacceptable. That law needs to be changed. So yeah, it's a really fun show, but a very important show, I think. And let's see how it goes.
Absolutely. And what's it been like for you listening to these stories, and they've been really authentic, but other people listening to them, what's the response been like at your personal journey, but also theirs?
Yeah. So for me, I've been humbled by people's honesty and willingness to talk. Surprised, I have to say, because when I first started trying to get guests, couldn't get anybody, and then suddenly people were like, and I get messages saying, "Can I come on the show to talk about such and such?" Um, just it's timely, it's needed, and the response has been incredible. There was one week where the wrong show was put on. It was actually the repetition of the week before. So what happens with radio is you don't actually hear anything, right? You just hear, "Oh, I heard your show, great," or "Oh, that was you," "Oh, you're the girl with the thing that with the meditation ding thingy." So I'll get that occasionally. But the week that this wrong show was put on, it was a repetition of the week before. I got so many messages saying, "Why is this show wrong? We've been waiting to listen." Da, 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 da. So actually, you always hear when things go wrong. But what's really nice was I realized that people are actually listening. All the shows are being put. Capital is doing a new website, and we're going to have a separate page just for podcasts. And so they've trialed out a couple of the shows on podcast on SoundCloud. And Fareed Kimani came on the show, the radio personality I was talking about, and he talked very openly about substance abuse, drugs, alcohol, his divorce, his wife taking his children away, and his subsequent rehabilitation, and where he is now 2 years on. And that podcast was uploaded by Capital, and it was one of the most downloaded podcasts from Capital, and one of the most listened to. And it was an hour and 20 minute show, and the average listening time was 40 minutes, which is really good for a podcast of that length. So yeah, I think people are ready. I think Kenya is ready for this conversation.
Absolutely. You mentioned you wanted people to talk openly and honestly, and it's happening.
It really is happening. It really is. It's just it needs to be a little bit more. I think it needs to be a little bit more. We have to find platforms where people are. When you've got a lone voice and another lone voice and a lone. Yes, you do listen, but I think it's too disparate. And I think there has to come a point when we have to all be speaking off a similar platform, or one platform, or many platforms that have come together, kind of thing. And also, I think the government needs a lot more lobbying. And I have good experience of that, because the year before the election, I can't remember which year it was, I was one of the voices of mind in England, where 10 of us would lobby the government for parity of esteem of mental and physical health. So I do have experience of that. It's just the Kenyan government is a different ballgame. But I think we still need to be shouting out a bit louder, and not so much shouting out louder. I think shouting out in a more coherent, strategic way. So the odd radio show or the odd column is not going to do it. It has to be a much more holistic way of talking about this. And that's my issue at the moment. That's where I'm now trying to get next. Okay, I've done the national newspaper column. Okay, I've done the TV, Facebook Lives for KTN. Okay, I've done the radio stations for, oh, my light's just gone. I've done the radio station, but how can I have a more holistic picture? And I think that's the problem that I'm facing at the moment.
Okay. My other question was, what has it been like working in Kenya, working in that professional capacity?
Why are you asking me this question? Coming from the UK after 23 years, oh my gosh, it's been tough. Yeah. There are some amazing people here. There's some amazing talent. There's some amazing stories. There's a lot of drive. It's a very young nation. There are a lot of people who are wanting to, I'll sit at the back of an Uber and I'll talk to the Uber drivers, and these guys they're talented and they're motivated and they're hustlers and they want to do stuff. But you go into the media world and I have to say it's pretty jaded. Especially during COVID, a lot of people have lost their jobs or taken pay cuts or are working for a lot less. It's jaded, and I think it's not as professional as it should or could be. I've worked with the BBC in the UK. I've worked with HuffPost. I've Tresume this amazing Power Your Presence project, and I've seen the production values that come from that kind of, where there is money. I get it, there is money. But I find it hard that if somebody says they'll do something and they don't do it here, or they say they'll come at 9 o'clock and they rock up at 10 o'clock. I think that is a culture that needs to change. Or an email comes through and it's badly worded and it's badly written and the spelling is awful. Not because you don't know how to write English, it's just because you're just lazy or you've just done it in haste. And I think these things need to change. Part of it is I've had to step back a little bit and say, okay, my expectations are here. Perhaps they should be here. But then I think, why the hell should in the professional capacity, if my expectations are here, that's because I know that that's what should be achieved to get a job done. So am I willing to go down? I'm not sure. Do I have to go down just for my own sanity? Possibly. But time will tell. Time will tell.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. The next point I wanted to ask you was about your Engage talk. First of all, what is the Engage platform? And then tell me a little bit about the talk.
Okay, so Engage is to inspire, inform, and something else, I think it is. And it's yeah. I should know. I have a water bottle. So anyway, it's very much like a TED talk, but local kind of thing for people from all walks of life to talk and speak and tell their story. And really, they do it in 12 minutes. TED is an 18-minute. This is a 12-minute. We were looking for opportunities for me to speak here in Kenya to raise my profile, because to get work in media, I have to raise my profile. And I came into Kenya on the 2nd of December, not knowing anyone or anything, nobody knowing me, nobody knowing my work, because the UK is a very different ballgame. And so the guy I'm seeing, he manages quite a lot of my work and my business stuff. And he just contacted, in fact, Fareed, again, put us in contact with Engage, because Fareed had done a talk. Yeah. And we had a Zoom call with them, and they said, the next topic is curveballs, tell us your story. So I just told them my story over an hour. I started with when I left Kenya, when I met Jeremy, my depression, his cancer, my bereavement, the grief, and the 3 books, and then writing my 3rd book and finding some kind of equilibrium in my life through mindfulness and dance and all the other things that I use to create happiness. And I talked about the dating as well. And they said, so you have, I think it was 7 or 10 days to write your draft. No, you have something like 24 hours or 48 hours to write your first draft. Because you will be, if you want to do it, you can either come on this next batch, which we'll be filming in 7 or 10 days or something like that, or you can wait till October. And I was like, no, there's no way I'm doing it in 7 or 10 days or whatever. And I have to write drafts. And they all said, basically it was 3 against 1. It was Don, Agatha, who were from Engage, and my partner. And they said, what are you waiting for? Curveballs is such an apt thing because you have had curveball after curveball thrown at you. And this is serendipity. You should do this talk. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm getting old. I'm going to be 45 soon, and I have to write the bloody thing, get you guys to agree it, learn it by heart, and then go deliver it. I can't do it. And by the end of that, sort of, it was a 2-hour discussion. So my story, and then they're kind of, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And I don't know why I said yes. And I think I was just like, okay, I've got to raise my profile. I don't even know if I'm going to be here in October. Do I want to go traveling? I might be dead, actually. So let me just do it now, because that's how I live life. I'm very much do it now, because you might not be able to do it tomorrow, because circumstances will have changed. So I said yes. So yeah, over 7 days, I think I submitted 5 different drafts. And actually, I think it was 4 or 5 different drafts, but actually didn't change too much. It was more like cutting stuff out because it was too long. And I learned it 2 days before. And I went in that morning having not rehearsed it, because I don't like over rehearsing, because otherwise it loses its authenticity. And went in and delivered. And yeah, that was July 15th, I think we filmed. And then it's just been released a couple of weeks ago on YouTube.
Cool. And I watched that story, and I have to tell you, it gave me absolute goosebumps. And that sort of energy and power, just, it's all right, just knock things that come in your way. Just go and do what you want to do. So yeah, it was a very special story. Thank you for it.
Thank you. Thanks. I think what was interesting was I had gone in talking, I was going to talk about grief and stuff. And then when they heard about the dating, they were like, no, you have to throw the dating in. Yeah. And then what's your final kind of message? And it was interesting because Kenyan humor is very different to British humor. So that talk would have had to be adapted for British humor. So it was quite interesting what people found funny here and stuff. I tell you what was really, really funny was there's a comedian here called Shaz, and she came on my show. She was actually on my KTN show, and then she came on my Mindfulness, Music and More. And I said, she's only done stand-up comedy in the last couple of years. And I was like, oh my God, I've always wanted to do stand-up comedy. And when the Engage talk came out, I had so many of my friends say, so Shal, I think it's time you do stand-up comedy, because that dating thing was, and I was like, it's a really difficult thing to do, but it's definitely on my list of things I want to do.
Absolutely. Oh, I reckon you would be able to pull it off.
I think it's all prep, right? And it's writing, it's putting the material in. And I think humor has got me through the worst of times. Humor was definitely the thing that saw me and Jeremy through our cancer journey. When he had cancer, we probably laughed more in the last 2 years of his life than we ever did, which is ironic because he was so ill. And humor does see us, when I'm having a tough time with my current partner, it's like, we will end up laughing because actually humor sees us through it. And if you don't see humor in life, then you're missing out on a lot, because life is tough, right? That's what I said in my Engage talk. Life is tough, but it's also very beautiful, and it can be very funny, and it can be fun, and I think that's what you have to focus on. I'm not saying don't have the bad days, because that's not realistic. You've got to have the bad days. You've got to have the days when it's just tough, but it is also, you've got to find the fun in it and the humor in it. Otherwise, I think it's very difficult to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. And this year has shown us that it is difficult to get through when there is no humor, entertainment, and connection.
Exactly, right? And it's really funny. I went into the programming manager's office the other day at Capital, and I said, his name's Danny. I said, Danny, can you please, I want another show. I want something else. I'm bored. I need more excitement in my life. I need some fun. And he said, but I thought you were going to eventually be traveling. And I said, well, no, because I've now started a relationship. And he said, you started a relationship? And I said, yeah, so I'm here now. So he goes, love in Corona times? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And he said, no, that doesn't happen. I was like, yeah. So, and he said, how did that happen? And I had to explain it to him. And he said, and I said, oh, that sounds like it's a book, right? Love in Corona times. And it's really interesting because it's been such a tough time for so many people. Corona has been so tough. And it is, okay, we're not, even us, we're working through our financials at the moment and realizing that we need to bring more money in, and it's tough, and business is tough. And it's been tough for a lot of people, but it's also been, and I interviewed 21 people from around the world. In fact, RD, you were one of them for Corona, during Corona times. And one of the lines that has come out for me again and again is with a friend of mine, Jerry, a mutual friend. In fact, he's my partner's friend. And he said, in this time of sickness has come a time of healing. I absolutely love that, because I think it's so true that this has been a really tough time. And yet a lot of people have looked at their own mental health. They've looked at being kind. They've looked at how they spend their time. They've taken up meditation. They've taken up new hobbies that they do online. They've connected more. Would we be doing this really if it hadn't been for Corona? We wouldn't have even known about Zoom. So there's been this connection that's been so interesting. And some people have now gone back into that rat race, and I'm getting conversations from people going, we don't like it. We don't want to go back into that rat race. So, and it's causing them anxiety, and they're realizing that actually that time when they had to stop during Corona was a very special time. But why do we need a Corona to do that to us? Why can't we create that for ourselves? Why can't we create time for ourselves? Why can't we create connection for ourselves? Why can't we create self-healing and self-compassion for ourselves? And I think we shouldn't need a disease or a virus or pandemic to do that.
Yeah.
We need to start doing it for ourselves, I think.
Absolutely. And before we wrap up, Shalini, tell us about your books. Now, you said you've written 3 books. Yeah, tell us a bit about them.
Let me get a copy. Just bear with me for a minute.
It's all good.
Here we are. Sorry, I should have had those ready. So my first book is Always With You.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. And it's and that's Jeremy there. And it's a book, it's a memoir, and it's a true story of love, loss, and hope. So I talk about our love story, the mental health issues that I went through, the family estrangement, then his cancer diagnosis, that journey of 2 years with him. And then I talk about bereavement and grief, very, very, and I'm very authentic and I'm very open and it's quite stark to read. And then I talk about spirituality and my belief in the afterlife and kind of moving forward, what I've done. So I set up the Jeremy Lucas Education Fund. I wrote this book and what I'm hoping for my future. The second book was, so at my dad's funeral, which was 18 months after Jeremy's, I decided, wanting to kill myself for so many months, that I actually wanted to live life. And I realized I was very lonely. And so I started doing what every crazy 40-something-year-old woman does, started going online dating. And at the end of that online dating journey of 7 months, I wrote my second book. There you can see it. Online Dating at 40. The knobheads, nut jobs, and nice guys, because there were a lot of knobheads and there were a lot of nut jobs, and there were a few nice guys, which is fun. And then when I realized I couldn't find happiness in a man, because let's face it, if you don't have happiness within, then you're never going to get it from somebody else. It's a futile endeavor. So I started working on myself. I went back to teaching my dancing for myself, mindfulness. And I realized there were certain things that were helping me create resilience and compassion. You know, there's a really, it's really interesting. There's the Dalai Lama was once asked, what's the meaning of life, right? He was asked this by a waitress in an American ski resort, and nobody had asked him this question. He was there for a month or something touring, and nobody had asked him, what's the meaning of life? And he looks at this girl and he says, that's easy. That's a really easy question to answer. The meaning of life is happiness. The hard thing is, what is happiness? Is it the car? Is it the status? Is it the house? Is it the job? Is it your age? What is it? Or is it compassion and gratitude and love? And I realized that I had this wonderful house in Surrey, and that I had my car and I had my job and I was my business rather, and I was not happy. And the reason I wasn't happy was I was missing connection. And I was missing connection with people that meant something to me. I was not looking after myself. I was abusing substances. I was eating badly. I was watching too much TV. So I started changing all those things. And I came up with 10 techniques that work for me. And I believe these 10 techniques, and having done research and read other books and stuff, and those 10 techniques are working on myself, but also working on things like connection with other people, altruism. Definitely speaking my truth is one of them, that when you don't speak your truth, you're not authentic. And so I put those 10 techniques that I use on a day-to-day basis in my third book. It's called Happiness. Is it simply a mindset shift? And I believe that happiness can be a mindset shift. You choose to be happy. Yes, life will throw you curveballs and challenges, but how you react to those will determine your happiness. So if a curveball comes your way, you can either go, okay, I'm just going to fall down and let this curveball get the better of me, or you use it as as life's greatest teacher. You learn from it and you move forward. And that's how I choose to live my life. I'm not saying I don't have bad days. I have really bad days. I have days when I feel insecure and neurotic and emotional. But I always come back from them much faster because my resilience has got a lot stronger. Mindfulness has been a huge teacher for me. I had learned it many years ago before Jeremy passed away. I've used it, I've taught it. Dance is a big thing. And that's all part of this book. So yeah, those are my 3 books. I'm very proud of them, a little bit surprised that I've actually managed to sit and write 3 books. But I'm planning a 4th, and writing is a real passion. So yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And we'll put all of those links in this conversation when I do upload it. My final question to you is, anyone else who is watching this conversation, tell me three takeaways you would want for that person.
Okay, so I I I know this to be true, right? Life is really short and it's really fragile. I've learned that the hard way, having lost my soulmate to cancer. So I want you to, if there's one takeaway from this, it would be that treat life as short, that you don't know whether you're going to have tomorrow. So don't put off stuff that you want to do. Don't live a miserable life when you can really work at being happy, because life's too short. I think the second one is happiness should be your goal, right? That is what life is about, just as we said, the Dalai Lama said. So try and live a fun, fulfilling, compassionate life, and you'll find that you will then cultivate happiness. Don't look for happiness in those materialistic things, the money, the car, the holidays. Look for happiness. Don't even look for happiness. Look for compassion and fun and altruistic endeavors and learning. Have a thirst for learning, and you'll find, and look after yourself, look after your body physically and emotionally with the meditations and stuff, and you'll find that resilience and happiness will follow. So I think that's the thing. Don't chase happiness, cultivate the other things that will create happiness. And I think the third thing is that we can't be happy all the time, right? There are times we will fall, but we will rise again. There are times that we will cry, but we'll also laugh. There are times we'll fail, and failure is probably your best teacher, because you will come out of that failure. And allow yourself the time to love and to live and to just grow. And those are the things I would say to you, that really start living, because that's what life is for. Yeah, and don't get hung up on the small stuff. It's not worth it. You know, the oh, he said this, she said this nonsense. Just try and let it go. So yeah, that's what I would say.
That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor to have this conversation with you and about your new chapter. Shalini, and I'll post all your social platform links in the introduction, the conversation.
Brilliant. I'm on at Just Jhoom on everything. In fact, it's on the screen there. So everything: Twitter, Facebook, Insta, YouTube. It's all at Just Jhoom.
Brilliant.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Aarti. It's always such fun talking to you. I can't believe where the time's gone, but yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're very welcome.